There is a moment after a breakup, you probably know it, where the silence becomes so loud it feels like it has its own heartbeat. You are sitting there with your phone in your hand, his name right there in your contacts, and every single nerve in your body is screaming at you to just text him. Just one message, just to see. Just to know if he is thinking about you the same way you are thinking about him. Just to fill the unbearable quiet that used to be full of someone you loved. And then someone says it. A friend, a podcast, a late night internet spiral, the no contact rule. Don't text, don't call, don't check his Instagram, don't reply if he reaches out. Go completely, utterly, uncomfortably silent. Disappear like you never existed. And somehow, magically, either you will get him back or you will heal so thoroughly that you won't even want him anymore. Simple, right? Wrong. Devastatingly, beautifully, completely wrong. Because the no contact rule is one of the most talked about, most misunderstood, most emotionally loaded pieces of relationship advice ever to exist. And women, real women, sitting in the messy middle of real heartbreak, have feelings about it. Deep, complicated, sometimes contradictory feelings that deserve far more than a 3-word rule can hold. So today, we are unpacking all of it. No filters, no judgment, just the raw, honest truth about how women really feel about the no contact rule and what it actually reveals about love, loss, and the courage it takes to choose yourself. First, what even is the no contact rule? Before we go deep, let us get clear on what we are talking about. Because the no contact rule means different things to different people, and a lot of the confusion starts right there. At its most basic, the no contact rule is exactly what it sounds like. After a breakup, you cut off all communication with your ex. No texts, no calls, no DMs, no watching their stories, no showing up at places you know they will be, no sending a message through a mutual friend, nothing. Radio silence for a set period of time, usually 30 days, sometimes 60, sometimes indefinitely. The idea behind it comes from 2 different schools of thought, and this is where it gets interesting. The first school says no contact is a strategy, a way to make your ex miss you, to create distance that breeds desire, to flip the emotional power dynamic so that the person who walked away suddenly starts chasing. In other words, it is a game, a calculated move in the chess match of post-breakup dynamics. The second school says no contact is healing, a way to create space from someone who has taken up too much of your emotional real estate, a way to break the addiction of checking his name on your screen, to stop reopening the wound every time you see his face, to give yourself the silence you need to actually hear your own thoughts again. Same action, completely different intentions. And how a woman feels about the no contact rule depends almost entirely on which version she has been handed and whether it actually matches what she needs. The women who swear by it and why they are not wrong. Let us start here because these women deserve to be heard without any asterisks. There is a specific kind of woman who will tell you with complete conviction and zero hesitation that the no contact rule saved her life. Not dramatically, or maybe a little dramatically, but the way things feel dramatic when they are actually true. She will tell you about the relationship that kept pulling her back in, the one where she knew on some level that it was not right, but every time it ended, she would find herself right back at the beginning within days. A text here, a call there, and I just want to talk that turned into, I just want to see you that turned into 3 more months of something that was slowly hollowing her out. And then someone told her to stop, to not respond, to go completely silent. And she did. And it was the hardest 30 days of her life. And it was the thing that finally broke the cycle. For these women, no contact is not a game. It is not manipulation. It is a lifeline. It is the external structure that their willpower alone could not maintain. Because willpower is not infinite, especially when you are in love with someone and the pain is fresh and every instinct you have is wired toward connection. What no contact gives these women is time. Time for the emotional fog to lift. Time for the body to stop producing the stress hormones that make everything feel like an emergency. Time for the part of the brain that is addicted to the relationship, because yes, love is neurologically similar to addiction, to begin detoxing from the constant stimulus of that person. And in that time, something extraordinary often happens. The woman starts to remember who she was before the relationship. She picks up things she dropped. She has conversations she had been too distracted to have. She starts sleeping better, eating better, thinking more clearly. And one day, maybe day 12, maybe day 28, maybe day 43, she wakes up and realizes the ache is slightly quieter than it was yesterday, and then slightly quieter the next day. And then one morning, it is just manageable. For these women, no contact is not about getting him back. It never was. It is about getting themselves back. And that, by any measure, is a win so profound that no one can argue with it. The women who hate it and why they are not wrong. Either now, let us sit with the other side. Because there is a group of women who hear no contact rule and feel something between eye roll and genuine anger, and their perspective is just as valid and just as important. These are the women who were handed the no contact rule not as healing, but as a weapon. Who were told by well-meaning friends or by the internet that if they just went silent long enough, he would come crawling back. That distance would make the heart grow fonder. That playing it cool, even when they were absolutely not cool, was the key to winning him back. And so they did it. They went silent. They white-knuckled their way through days of not responding to his messages. They performed indifference they did not feel. They waited and watched and hoped. And sometimes it worked, at least on the surface, because he did reach out, he did come back. But here is the thing about relationships that begin with a game. They tend to continue in the same register. You start with strategy, you sustain with strategy, and somewhere in the middle, you lose track of what was real and what was performance. These women are not wrong to be frustrated. They were taught to treat a deeply human, deeply emotional experience as though it were a board game. They were told to suppress their natural instinct toward connection, which is not weakness, by the way. It is one of the most profoundly human things about us, in service of an outcome. And that feels wrong because it is wrong. There is also the question of what silence actually communicates. In some relationships, in some contexts, disappearing sends a clear and healthy message. I am prioritizing myself. I need space to heal. In other relationships, in other contexts, disappearing sends something more confusing, something that can read as coldness or cruelty or a game being played. And women who have been on the receiving end of a man's calculated silence know exactly how much that hurts. It is not a tactic they are eager to replicate. Then there are women who simply do not believe in silence as a relational tool at all. Women who value direct communication above everything else, who feel that if something needs to be said, it should be said, clearly, honestly, with full eye contact. For these women, the no contact rule feels fundamentally dishonest. It feels like pretending, and pretending is not who they are. They are not wrong either. The complicated middle chopper, where most women actually live. Here's the truth that the internet does not like because it cannot be turned into a 30-day challenge or a viral tweet. Most women do not feel one simple way about the no contact rule. They live in the complicated middle. They try it and it helps for a week, and then he texts them and they respond and they feel guilty, and then they try again. They go 21 days and then they see his name on a mutual friend's story and the whole thing unravels. They commit to silence and then something happens. Something good or something terrible. And the instinct to share it with him specifically is so overwhelming that they cannot explain it even to themselves. They feel the pull in both directions simultaneously. The pull toward healing, toward independence, toward the version of themselves that does not need anyone to choose them in order to feel chosen. And the pull toward him, toward the history, toward the specific, irreplaceable way he laughed at something only the two of them would find funny. This is not weakness. This is not failure. This is what it actually looks like to be a human being navigating loss. And any advice that does not account for this, that offers a clean, linear, 30-day solution to the extraordinarily messy reality of heartbreak is not honest advice. It is a fantasy dressed up in productivity language. The women in the complicated middle need something different from what the no contact rule typically offers. They need compassion. They need flexibility. They need permission to not be perfect at healing. They need someone to tell them that going silent for a while and then breaking it and then going silent again is not failure. It is just the non-linear, unglamorous, very human process of letting go. What no contact reveals about how we attach here is something fascinating that almost never gets discussed in the no contact conversation. How a woman responds to this rule, whether she can do it, whether she wants to, whether it helps or hurts, often reveals something profound about her attachment style. And understanding that is far more valuable than any 30-day rule. Securely attached, women tend to approach no contact pragmatically. They understand that space is healthy after a breakup. They can implement it without excessive guilt or anxiety because they have a fundamental trust in themselves, a baseline belief that they will be okay regardless of what the other person does. For them, no contact is simply a tool. They pick it up when it serves them and put it down when it does not. Anxiously attached women, and there are many of them because anxious attachment is extraordinarily common, particularly among women who grew up in unpredictable emotional environments, often find no contact almost physically painful. Their nervous system is wired to experience distance as danger. Silence reads as abandonment. The urge to reach out is not just emotional, it is physiological. It is the body trying to regulate itself by reconnecting with the person it had coded as safe. For these women, no contact without support is an enormous ask. They need more than a rule. They need therapy, community, grounding practices, ways to teach the nervous system that it is safe even in the silence, that the quiet will not destroy them, that they can survive without the constant reassurance of contact. Avoidantly attached women, interestingly, often find no contact the easiest of the three. They are already wired toward self-sufficiency, toward retreat, toward managing emotions by reducing connection. For them, the challenge is not staying silent. It is eventually learning to break the silence. Learning that needing someone is not the catastrophe their history taught them it would be. Understanding your attachment style does not fix heartbreak, but it tells you so much about why you are struggling in the specific way you are struggling, and that knowledge alone can be quietly life-changing. The version of no contact nobody talks about. There is a version of the no contact rule that lives outside the breakup conversation entirely, and it might be the most important one. It is the no contact you enforce with someone who was never good for you. Not an ex in the traditional sense, maybe someone you dated briefly, someone who kept you at arm's length while keeping you just close enough, someone who showed you in 100 small ways that they were not choosing you, but who you could not seem to stop hoping would. Someone who, if we are being honest, you were never quite in a relationship with, but who took up an enormous amount of emotional space anyway. The no contact rule with this person is not about getting them back. There is nothing to get back because there was never anything solid to begin with. It is not even entirely about healing, though healing is part of it. It is about something harder and more foundational. It is about learning to stop auditioning. Women who have been in situationships, in the gray area of almost relationships, often spend an extraordinary amount of energy trying to be enough, trying to be easygoing enough, available enough, interesting enough, beautiful enough, low maintenance enough, trying to perform a version of themselves that might finally tip the scales in their favor. And that performance is exhausting in a way that is hard to describe because it is invisible even to the woman doing it. It becomes such a habit that she cannot feel it anymore. No contact with this person is not just cutting off communication. It is cutting off the performance. It is deciding for the first time, maybe, that she is not going to audition anymore. That she is not a part to be cast, that she is the whole show. That is a revolutionary act, dressed up as a rule about not texting someone. What happens when he reaches out, the real test. Every woman who has ever tried no contact knows that the actual test does not come from within. It comes from outside, in the form of a notification that makes her heart do something embarrassing. He texts, he calls, he watches her story after 3 weeks of nothing. He sends something deliberately vague, a meme, a song, the kind of reach out that is designed to get a response without technically counting as vulnerability. And suddenly, everything she spent 3 weeks building feels like it is made of sand. This is the moment that the no contact rule was always leading to. Not the silence itself. The silence is just the setup. The test is what she does when he comes back. And here is what women discover in this moment, if they have used the time well. They find out what they actually want, not what they thought they wanted in the immediate, raw aftermath of the breakup, but what they want now with some clarity, with some perspective, with enough distance to see the relationship for what it was, rather than what they were hoping it would become. Some women discover they want to respond. And that is okay. The goal was never to punish him or to win a game. If she has healed enough to re-enter that conversation with clarity and self-respect, responding is not a failure of the process. It is the process working. Other women discover, to their own surprise, that they do not want to respond, not out of anger, not as a strategy, simply because the silence gave them enough space to realize that what they were mourning was not him specifically. It was the version of him she had constructed in her mind, the relationship she had hoped for rather than the one she had actually had. And when that veil lifts, the urgency disappears. Both of these outcomes are valid. Both are real, and both are only possible if the silence was real, if she used the time to actually look inward rather than just performing distance while staying emotionally tethered. What no contact is really about, after everything, all the women who swear by it, all the women who reject it, all the complicated middle ground, here is what it really comes down to. The no contact rule at its best is not about him at all. It is not about making him miss you. It is not about proving something or winning something or engineering a particular outcome. Those versions of no contact are built on a foundation of fear. Fear of being forgotten, fear of being replaceable, fear that if you do not play the game perfectly, you will lose for good. The version of no contact that actually changes a woman's life is built on something completely different. It is built on the quiet, radical, sometimes terrifying belief that she is worth investing in, that her own peace is worth protecting, that her time and attention are not infinite resources to be given away to whoever asks for them most persistently. It is the decision to turn the focus, just for a while, just long enough, away from what he is doing and thinking and feeling, and back toward herself, her own healing, her own growth, her own life, which existed before him and will continue to unfold after him in ways she cannot yet imagine. That is what the silence is for, not to create longing in someone else, to create space in herself, space to feel what she has been too busy managing to feel, space to hear what she has been too distracted to hear, space to remember, slowly and imperfectly, who she is when she is not organizing her life around someone else's comfort. And here's the most beautiful irony of the whole thing. Women who do no contact for themselves, genuinely for themselves, not as a tactic, often become so magnetic in the process that the question of whether he comes back becomes almost secondary, because she has come back, back to herself, back to her own power, back to the version of her life that has nothing to prove to anyone. That is the version of no contact that nobody puts in a 30-day program, but it is the only version that truly works. The permission you did not know you needed. If you are reading this in the middle of your own silence, whether you chose it or had it chosen for you, here is what Sophia wants you to know. You are allowed to find this hard. You are allowed to have good days and terrible days that arrive in no particular order. You are allowed to break the rule and then start again. You are allowed to not be perfect at this. You are also allowed to be angry about the fact that you are sitting in silence while he presumably is just living his life. That anger is information. It is telling you something about what you deserve, which is more than uncertainty, more than being someone's option, more than waiting to see if someone will finally decide you are worth choosing. You are allowed to grieve, not just the relationship, but the future you had built in your imagination, the version of how it was supposed to go. That loss is real, even when the relationship itself was flawed, even when you know intellectually that it was not right. The heart does not process loss intellectually, and it does not operate on anyone's timeline but its own. And you are allowed, this one is important, to use this silence not as a holding pattern, but as a launching pad, to take the energy you are pouring into wondering about him and pour it into something that is entirely yours. A project, a friendship, a dream you deferred because the relationship quietly consumed it. A version of yourself you have been meaning to get back to. The no contact rule at its best is an invitation, not to play hard to get, to come home to yourself. And that is always, always worth it. The bottom line, do women feel good about the no contact rule? Sometimes. Do they hate it? Sometimes. Do they find it complicated and messy and hard and occasionally transformative and occasionally pointless and always more nuanced than anyone on the internet suggests? Every time, because women are complicated and messy and hard and occasionally transformative themselves. And the rules we use to navigate love and loss have to be big enough to hold all of that complexity, or they are not rules worth following. The no contact rule is not a magic fix. It is not a guaranteed strategy. It is not a one-size-fits-all solution to the ancient universal human experience of loving someone and losing them. But when it comes from the right place, from self-respect rather than strategy, from healing rather than hoping, it can be one of the most quietly powerful things a woman does for herself. Not because it brings him back, because it brings her back. And she was always the one worth coming back to.